Bio 2. This is Mr. B. We're continuing on with our introduction to the mammals. So we kind of ended our last video with their form and function, talking about mammals have a great ability to control their body heat and going along with a high metabolic rate. So now we're going to continue on with all the things they need to do to survive. And our first one being feeding. And so because of a high metabolic rate, a mammal must eat a lot of food to maintain homeostasis. So to keep that nice internal balance, they have to eat a lot of food. And again, that's probably why you all are hungry all the time, because you try to just maintain homeostasis. So that's what you need to tell your parents from now on when you're hungry, is that you have to eat in order to maintain homeostasis, and then hopefully they will give you some more food there. And then some mammals are herbivores, some mammals are carnivores, and some mammals, which includes humans, are omnivores. So the wide range of feeding is present throughout the mammal group. And then there are certain whales that are filter feeders. So we know now, by now, we've talked about this, that whales, even though they live in the water, they are in fact mammals. A lot of them just swim through the water with their mouth open, taking in whatever kind of comes in. Mostly they're just wanting microscopic organisms. And so as mammals have evolved, the form and function of their jaws and teeth became adapted to eat foods other than insects. So early on, the first mammals, that's basically their only food source they could eat, because they were living in a world full of giant dinosaurs. It's not like they were going to go attack any big reptiles, so they needed to eat insects. And so the joint between the skull and the lower jaw allowed mammals to evolve larger, more powerful jaw muscles and different ways of chewing. So just the way that the jaw is connected to basically the upper portion, the lower jaw is connected to the upper portion of the jaw or the rest of the skull, it's allowed us to have better ways to chew. And so now we can take a look at how kind of some of the evolution of mammals to different food sources has kind of resulted in different types of teeth. And so this is kind of a wolf compared to a horse, so we're going to break it down even more. And so canines are the first teeth we're going to look at. So in the wolf, we have very large canines. They're represented in pink there, whereas the horse, they're basically reduced down to nothing. And so canines are pointed teeth. And so carnivores use them for piercing, gripping, and tearing. So that is why a wolf has very large canines. And in herbivores, they are reduced or absent. So that is why the horse, which is a herbivore, has no canines whatsoever. Well, it has a little tiny nub of a canine is all it has. And so that can give us an evolutionary clue. If we found an ancient mammal fossil, we could look at the teeth and we could determine what type of food they ate. And so our next type of teeth are incisors, and these are chisel-like teeth, and they are used for cutting, gnawing, and grooming. And so looking at the horse and the wolf, the horse might have a little bit larger incisors. However, they're pretty similar in size between both our herbivore and our carnivore, and that is probably going along with the grooming portion and for the gnawing, because even once a wolf tears into the meat, it still needs to cut and grind at it away a little bit, whereas horses are going to be constantly cutting at different types of vegetation, and they're all going to be grooming themselves as well. And so our last type of tooth here that we're going to look at are molars, and their job is to crush and grind food. And so we have molars present in both, however they're completely different shape. So in a wolf, they have a very ridge-shaped, and these ridge shape allow them to interlock during chewing, and they almost make like blades of scissors. So they can have the meat, they put them back there in the molars, they interlock in a jagged way, and when they chew, it makes them blades like scissors. However, a horse has broad, flattened molars and premolars, and they're adapted for grinding down tough plants. So the scissor-like motion would not be as useful for the horse, because it wouldn't work as well to cut up the plants, because it's a little bit tougher, to whereas they can kind of slice and grind through the meat. They actually just need to just really grind the plants. And so the teeth is the first part of the digestive process. So after that, a mammal's digestive tract breaks down and absorbs the type of food that it eats. So each mammal is going to have a different digestive tract based off the type of foods that they consume. Carnivores, they have a short intestine because enzymes will quickly digest meat. So it's actually easy for our body to digest meat fairly quickly. However, herbivores have a longer intestine because tough, fibrous plant tissues take longer to digest, which most people might think of the opposite. We think of plants, like when we eat our vegetables, as kind of being kind of easier to eat. They're kind of healthier for you, so they're going to be easier to digest. However, plant tissue takes longer to digest than meat does, so herbivores will have longer intestinal tracts because they have to have more capability to break down the plant tissue. And so cows, we know them, we see them all the time. They eat grass. That's all they eat basically. And so cows have a specific stomach chamber that's called the rumen. So this is an important thing to know, in which swallowed plant food is stored and processed. So it's an extra part of their stomach to store and process just plant food. And it actually contains bacteria that will digest the cellulose of plant tissues. So cellulose is what is in the cell wall of plants, if you remember that going back to the first semester. And so the cows have a portion of their stomach with bacteria living in it that helps them digest that tough to digest cellulose. So that is our digestion of mammals. Again, it varies a lot. Now we're going to go to respiration, to where we're now going to see a little more uniformity among how they breathe. So all mammals use lungs to breathe. That's kind of a tongue twister there. And another important word is that they have what's called a diaphragm. And this is a large, flat muscle at the bottom of the chest cavity that helps in breathing. So this is really, really important muscle, especially in mammals and in humans as well. A diaphragm present in all mammals helps with breathing. And how it works is that when an animal inhales, our chest muscles will lift the rib cage up and out, and then our diaphragm will pull the chest cavity down. And all of these combined actions of the chest muscles and the diaphragm increase the volume of the chest cavity. So the diaphragm working together with the chest muscles increase the volume of the chest cavity, and because the volume is increased, we are able to pull air into our lungs. So that is how we are able to absorb air, as we increase the volume of our chest cavity. And you can kind of feel it. I just kind of did a breath right there. You can kind of feel that actually happening. However, when an animal exhales, the chest muscles relax, which lower the rib cage, the diaphragm relaxes, and the volume of the chest cavity decreases, and then therefore air is then pushed out of the lungs. So when you take a deep breath in, you can feel everything kind of raising up, and then when you let the air out, you can kind of feel it all lower down. That's because you're actually increasing and decreasing the volume of your chest cavity. So that's, when someone asks you what you're doing if you're breathing really heavy, you can just say, oh, I'm increasing and decreasing the volume of my chest cavity. And so that, again, is pretty common and pretty similar in most mammals. And so now to end, we'll talk about the circulatory system of mammals. So they have two loops forming that make up their circulatory system in a four-chambered heart. So the right side of the heart receives oxygen-poor blood from the body and then pumps it to the lungs. So the body sends its oxygen-poor blood to the right side of the heart. Then the heart sends that oxygen-poor blood back to the lungs to receive more oxygen. And then the left side receives oxygen-rich blood from the lungs, so the lungs has to give it back to the heart, and then the heart pumps it to the rest of the body. And here's kind of what a mammalian heart looks like. Again, it's just, I would never ask you to memorize every single part of this and be able to label this, but just being able to tell that this is in fact a mammalian heart, because it is kind of one of the more advanced ones we have. So that is it for our second part of mammals. Let me know if you have any questions.